Hello, this is Mike Hayes, and on this video we're continuing our discussion about blues guitar. In particular, blues guitar chord progressions. The model we're working with at the moment is the 12-bar blues in G, and we're looking at the T-Bone Walker style of guitar playing. And the T-Bone Walker song that we're looking at the moment is Stormy Monday. So on the screen at the moment you'll see the basic 12-bar blues chord progression that we began with in the key of G, and down the bottom you'll see the progression that we're working on today. Now up till this point in previous videos we've discussed how we can substitute ninth chords for the original dominant seventh chords. So in the original 12-bar blues progression we have dominant seventh chords, and in our bottom progression we have substituted them for ninth chords. The other thing we've done so far is in the turnaround bar is that we've used an augmented chord. So the D augmented chord is being used in place of the standard D seventh turnaround. So today's blues guitar project is to take a look at how T-Bone Walker arrived at bar 3. So in the original chord progression we have just a G 7th chord, and today we'll be looking at how T-Bone Walker came up with this chord sequence here: 2 beats of G9 and then 2 beats of A flat 9. And of course, if you're watching somebody play this progression, it's easy just to see that the guitarist would move up 1 fret higher. So the purpose of this video is to explain how that works, so that once you understand the underlying principles, you'll be able to apply this to other chord progressions. So it's one thing to copy something off another guitar player and just say that, well, we just move up 1 fret, but it's a completely different thing to be able to understand how that works. So before we go any further, let's begin by listening to our latest version of the 12-bar blues with the new chord sequence in bar 3. I'll play the chord progression through twice. Now I think you'll agree that's a very simple but very effective way to create a sense of movement, whereas in the original blues chord progression, bar 3 and bar 4 would have simply had a G 7th or G 9th chord. So let's go over to our circle of fifths and have a look at how this works. The chord we're wanting to create movement on is G, in this case a G 7th or a G 9th. I'll write it down and talk about it as a 7th chord, a dominant 7th chord. One very simple way to create movement is to move between the original chord and its fifth. In this instance that would mean G 7th and D 7th. let's have a listen to how this sounds, moving between a G7th and a D7th. Now that we understand the principle whereby we can create a sense of movement by moving from your original chord to its fifth, the next step is to have a look what T-Bone Walker did in his chord progression. And what T-Bone did was use a flat 5 substitution. In other words, instead of playing D, he used a chord that was the flattened fifth of D. And to find the flattened fifth, we move directly across and we'll find the flat 5 on the exact opposite side of the chord we began on. So in other words, we're starting on D, and the flattened fifth of D is A flat. Let's review. We just discovered that we can create movement by moving from our original chord, G7th, to its fifth. In this instance, we're moving between G7th and D7th. T-Bone Walker has taken this a step further by using a chord that's a flattened fifth of D7th. And here is the chord progression we find in bar 3 of Stormy Monday. G7th moving to A flat 7th. A flat 7th is a tritone substitution or a flat 5 substitution for D7th. Now, I covered the concept of tritone substitution in great detail on other videos, but I've made a couple of notes here on the bottom of this page so you can see how this works. Here we have the notes in a D7 flat 5 chord, D, F sharp, A flat and C. And I'm comparing that with the notes in an A flat 7 flat 5 chord. Now on the surface it looks like the notes are different, but when we take in consideration what we call the enharmonic equivalence, in other words F sharp is another way of writing G flat, which would mean this F sharp would be the same note as that G flat, and that E double flat is another way of writing the note D. So here we have E double flat is another way of writing D. When we take that into account, we discover that both these chords contain the exact same notes. That's why we can substitute one chord for another. So I hope you find this interesting, and I hope you enjoy the Stormy Monday chord progression. And we've been talking about blues guitar, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next video.